what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan Jackson. I am a co-director and co-founder of the Foot Candle Film Society and the annual Foot Candle Film Festival. And since there's a co in front of my name, that insinuates that there is another person that is also holding that co-title, and he's right here on the other side of the table, Chris Fry. How you doing, Chris?
Hello, everyone. I am doing fine. Speaking of the Foot Candle Film Festival that we are co-directors of, we actually, believe it or not, even though it's not until September of 2021, we have opened up submissions.
That's right.
For the festival. So we've already done that. So you can find us on Film Freeway. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that on the podcast. So, yes. Yeah. Please do that if
any
you are
filmmakers
interested
out there, anybody who has a film they want to try to get submitted to festivals, we'd love to see it and consider it for next year's festival. So awesome. But today we're here to talk about films that you can watch right now, not ones you'll see at our festival next September. Foot Candle Films, we get together, we talk about some new release films, we review them. We also, in this particular episode, have some news to share with you, some different movie-related production news, maybe some directors doing some new projects, especially given the state of movie making and movie distribution these days. It's encouraging to hear when there's some exciting, interesting projects still coming on the horizon. And then Chris and I always finish up our episode with our recommendation, a film we want to recommend. Mine, I'll go ahead and tease, a little bit of a holiday spirit to it since we are going into Thanksgiving and we're a month away from Christmas. I'll be throwing out one a little more holiday themed this time. I do not know what Chris is recommending. We'll leave that as a nice surprise for the end of the episode.
Okay.
But Chris, we have two films to review today. We'll be first off discussing the film The Personal History of David Copperfield. That is the latest telling of the Charles Dickens classic's tale, starring Dev Patel. And then we'll be moving into a documentary called The Donut King, all about Ted Ngoy and his building his donut empire and the ups and downs of that story. But first, Chris, let's go ahead and talk about our first film to review. As I mentioned, it is The Personal History of David Copperfield.
Whether I turn out to be the hero of my own story, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these moments must show. My boyhood days seem now like a scarcely believable fiction.
London is full of wonders and wickedness, and it's ours, David, to go wherever we choose. Well, I'm not down there. Creditors make that road impossible. 2 tailors and a most unreasonable muffin man.
Copperfield!
Your mama is ill.
How old is she?
Very ill.
Very ill.
Very ill.
Very ill?
Dangerously ill.
She's dead.
We're very sorry.
I'm David Copperfield. I'm your nephew. You're the only family I have.
What do we do with him?
If I were you, I'd wash him.
Oh, donkeys! This is a donkey-free zone! Move it!
You're a remarkable woman. Very kind.
You had nothing, then you had something, and now you got nothing again. So stands to right you'll have something again.
You were staring. Is there something wrong with me?
No, I apologize for my rudeness.
Think nothing of it, sir.
He speaks very well.
It was actually me.
Oh, Romeo, do some work.
Good morning! Do you know what I want?
A straight jacket, a husband?
Feels like a party.
Ha ha.
Kite time!
Kite time!
But this narrative is far more than mere fiction. It is, in fact, written memory. And you'll have quite the ride on the way.
Chris, with the personal history of David Copperfield, we have a more modern take and a little bit of a more interesting take on the Charles Dickens classic tale of a young orphan who's able to triumph over many obstacles along the way. The story is told from David Copperfield's perspective as he's documenting and kind of coming about a way to write down his story and create the actual David Copperfield story novel. It stars Dev Patel as David Copperfield. We have a litany of other really esteemed actors and great names in this cast. Tilda Swinton, Hugh Laurie, Peter Capaldi, Ben Whishaw, among many, many others. Chris, I'll go ahead and tell you, I think we've talked about this before when we reviewed the films like Emma. There's one we reviewed a couple of years ago that Kate Beckinsale was in.
The Young Victoria?
No,
it was another one.
Which one was the one with Kate Beckinsale?
I know what you're talking about.
I know. We're drawing a blank. But anyway, the idea of these period dramas that are also kind of comedic and, but maybe based on some literary work. I've enjoyed them, but I always find them tend to be a little on the confusing side with a huge cast of characters and a lot of different machinations going on in the story, but generally found them to be fairly enjoyable along the way. With this particular film, directed by Armando Iannucci, who I did a little reading up on, and interestingly enough, I don't know if you knew this, Chris, but the director of this film is best known as a writer, and he's written Death of Stalin.
Oh, and directed that one. So, yeah.
Veep, the actual TV show, political TV show, In the Loop, The Thick of It. He was a writer for all of those. Okay. So he is directing this Charles Dickens tale in a little bit more modern take with some humor, with some drama. I'm curious, Chris, when you look at films like Emma that we reviewed a while back, even if I wanted to say Enola Holmes, similar kind of idea based on a literary work, younger character, kind of a faster pace with comedy and drama mixed in. How does this one kind of fare with some of those retelling of some literary works?
So first off, from the help of Google, Love and Friendship was the name of the Kate Beckinsale.
Love and Friendship, that's right. Gotcha.
Okay, so how does this fare in comparison to some of those others? I remember when we reviewed Emma, we start off saying at least I'll speak for me. I'm not a period piece person. Yeah. That right off the bat, I'm not a period piece person. Period piece with comedy sometimes helps me like it a little better. And you and I were both favorable on Emma. Mm-hmm. Coming to this, I saw the cast of characters and that made me excited. But then you also get worried, like, okay, is it star loaded just because they all wanted to work with Iannucci or they like the story? It's like, what's the deal? But I was surprised really about how well it worked. And I think a lot of that has to do with, it does have serious parts in the story, but there is some lightheartedness and light touches to it. And Dev Patel, I thought this is probably the best thing I've ever seen him do. Yep. He was really good. And also to me overall, I felt like, and this could make you think, okay, this is the movie for me, or this is not the movie for me. It was like a period piece told by a mashup of Michel Gondry and Tim Burton of the early 90s, kind of like, in their heyday type thing. That's what this is. Now, if you hear that and you're like, oh no, then maybe this isn't for you, because it does, like you're saying, take some risks and some ways of shooting things very creatively. And then there's like the Hamilton type casting that they do. So some people are like, nah, I just want it told normally. And if so, this is not for you. But I found it to be rather enjoyable.
I love this movie.
Oh, good.
I had such a good time with this movie. It redeemed my faith in period dramas based on novels, classic novels. I am not familiar with the David Copperfield story. So, that in itself was kind of, I was going into this very fresh.
Okay.
A little trepidatious because it's the things you talked about as well. It's a period drama. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of plot going on. Mm-hmm. But yet I think the pace, the tone, and really the acting, and I agree with you, Dev Patel was really, really good in this film. Mm-hmm. It's a shame this film's not going to get a lot more attention and release, because I think he's he really shows some great work in this film. Everybody does. I think the acting across the board is really strong.
It came out August 2020, which basically meant all online, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's good in this film. I think everybody's giving it a great shot. Even the bigger, Tilda Swinton, Hugh Laurie, so good, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But Dev Patel was really, really shown in this film. So I'm all for it. I love, knowing that it was the director and writer of The Death of Stalin, which I also love. I think is a wonderful movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Death of Stalin did that same idea where it had to take a very serious, dramatic situation and still infuse it with enough biting humor to make it enjoyable.
Right.
And it worked. This is very similar in that, yes, you could get wrapped down with all of the drama and just the grief and the misery that David Copperfield goes through. But it was really funny. I mean, there were moments that were, I felt, laugh out loud funny for me, dialogue. It was more comedic timing.
Sure.
I think it's just the director knowing how to write the lines and how to pace them just right to where it gets the maximum effect from a humor standpoint. I really had a great time with this. I found myself laughing out loud. I found myself actually following what was going on.
That's always nice.
Yeah. I mean,
especially if you haven't read the source material.
No.
Yeah.
I will say there's some things. I mean, it still got a little confusing at points. It still got a lot of characters, a lot of people thrown in the mix. It was it's a lot to keep up with, and it's a little bit of a heavy lifting to kind of follow the story.
Sure.
And it was a little impacted by the fact too that Peter Capaldi and Hugh Laurie look very, very, very similar.
Yes, they do.
And that threw me off a few times.
Both playing really funny, quirky characters too, which doesn't help.
I know. Yeah. So a couple of times I'm like, all right, which one was this again? Because they look really similar in the film, and they're both made up to look very similar to each other.
Yeah. Is this the, quirky, pretty much homeless guy?
Yeah.
Or is this the quirky uncle dude that is going crazy writing things about which king who has his head chopped off? Which one is this? Right. Yeah.
Which, even you describing his fascination with was it King George?
I think you're right.
Yeah, it was God, so funny. It still was a little confusing. It was still a period drama. It was still a lot of names and people to keep up with, and who was this Mr. and Mrs. and Lord and whoever. But if you can kind of get past that, and after a while, I kind of just didn't worry about following that. I just wanted to see scene to scene.
Right.
And it was terribly enjoyable. I've seen some criticism online after watching it last night. I think there's some people that feel like it's maybe too whimsical and too fast paced and all that. But this is what I needed to really enjoy this type of film. I need it to go fast. I need it to be really creative. Mm-hmm. And I thought the transitions, like you talked about, whenever we're going from David Copperfield's mind writing his story to the actual telling of his story, the transitions they would use to blur that were really pretty creative. There's one scene where David Copperfield as a young boy is being shipped off somewhere on a train. And basically the people, his caretakers, are telling him this in his bedroom. And then all of a sudden a train just whishes through the bedroom and he's gone. I'm like, okay, so that helped that transition. Right. Another one where you see a giant hand reach into a house that they're staying in, and you realize that that's because somebody's coming in and wrecking it, or demolishing that setup they've got. It's just some really creative touches that, like you said, is very Michel Gondry type of feel to it.
Or Terry Gilliam type.
Yeah, Terry Gilliam, a little bit of Burton-esque. Yeah. I mean, I had a good time with this film. I really did.
Yeah, I think if I was to state a negative about it, and there again, this is an example where I'm not familiar with the source material. I knew there was a book, but I'd never read it. And actually, I think that may have helped me in some ways because I wasn't bound up with how they're changing it. So that was kind of a nice thing.
Yeah.
But at the end, especially I'll say in the last maybe third, I felt like some things were maybe a little rushed. Specifically, and I don't know because I don't know how they are in the book, but Ben Whishaw as Uriah Heep, there's a really interesting dynamic going on with his relationship to David Copperfield. And maybe it's just because I wanted to see more of Ben Whishaw. Yeah. But I felt like that was, it felt like it should have been a more significant plot point. But because of everything else going on, it just kind of, it wasn't. And I wish that would have been a little bit more. This is a rare instance. I won't say it's the first I've ever done on the podcast. We'll have to get our intern to look into it. The movie was 2 hours. This is a rare instance where I'll say, I might have been able to see 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I could have maybe used 30 more minutes just to kind of give some more characters some breathing time. Like, kind of differentiating Mr. McCabish or whatever his name was and Uncle Dick or whatever his name, like the two, Peter Capaldi and Hugh Laurie, differentiating those characters, giving a little bit more time to breathe. Maybe that would have done it, or because they look so much alike, maybe I wouldn't have. But it's a rare instance where, like you're saying, I really enjoyed it, and I would have enjoyed a little bit more time, and maybe that would have helped the clarity of the story for me.
Yeah, I think they were. I got the impression, again, not being familiar with the source material, I get the impression they tried to put everything that was in the book in this film. And it did take 2 hours, and it was really fast-paced. And I agree, the last 5 minutes, I actually, the very last scene of the movie, when it just kind of ends, I'm like, okay.
And it's done.
It's done. It's like, they really didn't want to waste a moment, in the film. And there's some things did feel a little rushed towards the end. I agree with you on that. I think.
Actually, you mentioned the end. There's hints that's how it may. You think like, I bet this is going to happen with these two people, and then at the end, it's like, oh, yep, and here we are, and it's done.
Here it is. These two are together, and the end.
And scene. And then I was kind of like, wait, what? So that did happen, and we're done. So, but I still liked it.
Yeah. I will call out a couple of scenes that I think carry forward that same spirit that I love so much about the death of Stalin.
Okay.
And that is it's a scene that is both dramatic and upsetting, but yet handled in a way that you can't help but laugh. And to me, it's a scene where Dev Patel, as David Copperfield's working in the bottle factory.
Yes.
And his previous caretakers, the one who sent him off to work there, come to visit to tell him news about his mother.
Oh.
And it's very upsetting news. But yet the way it was delivered was so funny, like depressingly funny, like darkly funny. But that's exactly the kind of scene where it's just, yes, okay, I get it. You're both upset and angry, and this is a very upsetting scene, but yet the way it was handled was just so written so comedically well. It's like, we're here to tell you about your mother. She's very sick. It's like, okay, well, she's really sick. I don't think we've told you quite how bad she's dead.
I need to go see her.
And it's just this building, and it's just both funny, but also just heartbreaking. And I think I look back to Death of Stalin and so many of the scenes there. I mean, when people are getting executed and killed, but yet it's done with this way that you just kind of have to laugh about it. I saw so much of that same touches here, and it just worked for me. So, yeah.
I guess maybe, I would never have picked Iannucci to do this film because Death of Stalin, In the Loop, a lot of it's profanity laden. Mm-hmm. This is PG.
Yeah.
So it'd be a great movie to watch with your family over Thanksgiving. It's very PG, but some of I think the comedy, what you can see, maybe the translation of Iannucci is A, the fast pace, but B, like you're saying, it's humorous and some of it is light, but some of it is kind of dark. Like that scene you're talking about is really, it's funny, but it's funny in a dark way.
And there's a scene. I mean, I was kind of surprised with the PG rating, honestly, because there was a scene where kind of traumatic.
He's being beaten
as a kid. Yeah. Never see it explicitly, but you get the sense of what's going on.
Right.
There's some very light jokes about suicide, especially with one of I think it was Mr. Macabre.
Yeah.
So just some moments that I thought pushed the boundary a little bit, but I will say, I agree with you. I do think it's something a family can watch.
Right.
And especially if you want your family to kind of be knowledgeable about the David Copperfield novel, this is a great way to really understand that story. And it's incredibly entertaining. So, I'm actually I want to see this again. I actually may watch this again over the holidays. I had such a good time with it. So, trying to think what else here with this. I mentioned the Tilda Swinton had a part, which I did not know she was in the film even when I started watching it. And she was good. I mean, she was Tilda Swinton. She was
playing a very quirky type character. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who doesn't like donkeys?
Yeah. which, they never really explained that,
Which I
but
was
I was
actually
okay with that.
Yeah, sure. It's like, you don't like donkeys. Okay.
Yeah. Even her first appearance during the, again, this is kind of even talking about the creative side of this film, what I love so much. When you start to realize in the first 5 minutes that David Copperfield is telling his story, writing it down, and actually we see him initially reciting it to an audience. Mm-hmm. We realize he's writing it, but then he's running. We see a scene of him running to the place where he's being born,
right,
which I think is just, again, very creative.
Sure.
He's running to get there in time to see himself be born. Right. He's standing over the shoulder of everyone as he's being born. And then Tilda Swinton's there as well. And it's some great moments. And sure. I think right away, that first 5 minutes told you, we're going to play around with the storytelling devices here a little bit, and we're going to have some fun with it. And I was hooked right away once they started doing that. So it was great. I've got very little negative feedback on this film. I had such a good time with it. And other than it still being a tad on the confusing side,
sure,
a lot of characters, a lot of names. I really wish they had made Hugh Laurie and Peter Capaldi look somewhat different from one another. That would have helped considerably.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I just had a great time with this film. I love the pace. I love the timing. I love the comedy. And even the end, as rushed as it was very touching and moving, and just, it worked. So
I think this is one of those films that I liked it. Mm-hmm. And I think on a second revisit, which I'm hoping to do over the holidays as well with the family, I think I'll like it more, because then I know the plot beats and I can just totally sit back, like you were saying, and let it wash over you and not worry about, wait, who's this person? Yeah. So I think it'll probably go up a little in my estimation. So
I do have to call out one actress.
Okay.
And I'm trying to make sure I'm pulling out the right one, because this actress, it looks like, played two different parts.
Oh, really? Okay. Huh. I'm interested to see who.
So Morfydd Clark.
Okay.
Who played Dora Spinlow. Dora.
Okay.
That's the girl that David Copperfield proposes to later in the film. The singer. But she also played Clara Copperfield.
Which would have been his mom, right?
Huh. Which
I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize that either.
Because I think in the movie, Dora has blonde hair.
Yes.
And the mom has dark hair. So obviously wigs.
But she's listed as playing both parts.
I didn't realize that.
So I do want to call her out because she played both parts really good.
Yes.
And I did really love the character of Dora. I just think it was added a lot to the comedic tone of the film. But also her last moment in the film, I'm not going to spoil it, but just, her exiting the story.
In an interesting...
was really just a nicely touched done.
And you know what it reminds me of? I thought of it, I didn't think of it at the moment, but I thought, that's kind of reminiscent of something I've seen recently. It's actually kind of reminiscent in the moment in Emma, where Emma's having this party and they're playing a game and she does something not nice to somebody. And it's kind of like a really big character thing. And it really strange. Yeah. The final scene with Dora, she's communicating back and forth with David. And it's like, and it's kind of but it humanizes the other character. Like it humanized Dora and you're like, okay,
I get it.
And remove. And in that garden thing, it was like that woman made Emma realize I'm a real person. And so it was that whole thing. Yeah. So that was really,
well, even
really
the scene
cool
preceding that, the big kind of climax with the Ben Whishaw character that we talked about, she's there. And at one point she even says why am I here? I have no bearing in the scene whatsoever. And everybody, you're like, yeah, you're right. You don't. We're not sure why you're here either. And it's just, I love that playing with the storytelling device. And
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Have I done gloating about this film?
No, it's nice to hear us both be on the same page with a film of equal measure. Sounds like.
I am disappointed because I just don't think it's getting quite the love from a lot of other critics, and unfortunately, audiences are just not going to see it. I mean, it's just it actually technically was a 2019 film that just finally got some release this year. And it's tried to play at theaters. Yeah, they're playing. I
think they were planning on it being a big thing.
I think it could have been a big movie, but disappointing. Just another victim of this situation, unfortunately. But I hope more people get a chance to see it when it's available online for people to watch.
Well, I think they are pushing it for awards, even though it may not get nominated for any. So hopefully it'll get some love somehow.
I hope so too. So that is The Personal History of David Copperfield, directed by Armando Iannucci, and of course based on the Charles Dickens classic tale. That is available Is it available anywhere right now, Chris, or is it going to be available soon?
That is a good question.
I don't think it's available quite yet.
I thought it was going to go video on demand. Maybe by the time they release this, it'll be video on demand.
We'll come back to that here. Just stay tuned.
We'll
We'll let you
answer
know
for
once
you.
we get a break and have our intern look that up for us.
Sure.
We'll let you know if it's available. I think actually by the time we're recording this, I think it is available for people to rent now. So anyway, we both definitely encourage you to check it out. It is worth your time. We had a good time with it. All right, Chris, let's move on to our second review, which is a documentary called The Donut King.
Donut time. Very tasty.
Uncle Ted has a very interesting reputation in our family. What I heard about him was that he had a lot of money and had a lot of donut shops.
Dunkin' Donuts found it so hard to break into the LA market that in the late 90s, they gave up.
They call me Donut King.
Donut, maple syrup, glazing donut.
Ted opened up 70 donut shops, and he gave Cambodian refugees a chance to really make it in America.
I sponsor more than 100 families. It spread like wildfire. It's so fast, so fast.
One time, he estimates his wealth at something like $20 million.
President Bush Sr. flew from the White House to give me a presidential award for achieving American dream.
Life was good.
Imagine a man with nothing, penniless, come to the most powerful country in the world, and he built something. I lost everything. Believe me, everything.
He wasn't the perfect man. They lost all these donut shops because of gambling.
He would do anything for money.
It just got worse and worse. If I report it, he goes to jail.
What the hell is going on?
Uncle Ted brought us here to survive.
We're a country built by immigrants, and I believe they will make a contribution to a better America.
The Donut King tells Ted Ngoy's story that is one of fate, love, survival, hard knocks, and redemption. That sounds like a pretty heavy tagline for a movie that sounds like it's just going to be about a guy making donuts. And that's totally what I expected, probably to be hungry after watching the first 30 minutes or so. It is a nice, tight hour and 30, so it's 90 minutes, nothing too heavy for you. But Alan, did this come across as just a typical food documentary for you about a guy making donuts? Or did you find there was a little bit more to chew on?
Oh, that was nice. This was a good documentary. You take a look at a documentary, and what's the job of a documentary? A documentary is to help us learn and be informed and be educated about maybe a topic that we'd like to know more about, or we're not as versed in to begin with. A lot of times it's telling a story that hasn't been told, or a real story that people haven't heard. And it's also to kind of entertain. You hope a good documentary is entertaining.
Sure.
And from that standpoint, this does check all those boxes. It is a story that I was not aware of about this gentleman and his history, and starting really so much of what we know as the donut chain and shop situation now. A lot of that is attributed to him. I mean, he created the pink donut boxes just to make them stand out.
Which I had living in North Carolina and being very familiar with Krispy Kreme, I never knew like the whole pink thing. I mean, I saw it on The Simpsons, which they do a brief clip of, but I never knew that was really such a big thing. Yeah. And I guess he started it. So.
Well, and then the so many of the Cambodian people owning donut shops, and that's still being something that's kind of still very prominent today. So there's a lot of things to learn from this. A lot of things to understand. And it was also entertaining in that the film was made, especially in the first half, very bright, very bouncy, a lot of great archival footage, a lot of great historical footage to kind of balance everything. So it did all that. My misgiving with the film to some degree is that it knows it's a documentary that's going to tell the rise and fall of a character, and it almost forces itself to follow that pattern to the T. So in other words, we're not going to say anything negative about this person for the first hour of this film, or
first 2/3,
45, 50 minutes of this film.
Sure.
And then we're going to flip it on a dime and tell you everything that he does wrong. And the whole last part of the movie becomes his downfall and redemption.
Sure.
it's very formulaic from that standpoint. So unfortunately, the whole first 45 minutes I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, when's it coming? Tell me when the bad side is. Tell me when the bad news is. Tell me when something bad happens, because I'm expecting it, because it's almost building up to be so perfect, and then to give you this big drop down in your perception of everybody. So I felt it was a little tried to play too much to that formula, and that was one thing I didn't care for as much about it. And I also thought the fall from grace was extremely dramatic and abrupt. I mean, there was no sense of it. There was no lead up to it. It was almost just like one moment you just hear one person on a testimony say, well, but he wasn't all good. And then it was just like this litany of like this whole 15-minute section of everything he's doing wrong. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed a little dramatic. And I wish it had been a little more nuanced with, showing us some good and bad along the way. And then we kind of naturally know that there's going to be some fall from grace later on. However, it was entertaining. It was informative. I thought it ended nicely. So I got a lot out of it. So I definitely don't want to put the film down. I hate that it was so tried and true, so formulaic to this standard documentary biopic formula we've gotten so used to. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think, I guess boringly so, you and I are kind of on the same page with this. I liked the film.
Yeah.
But the thing that did kind of stand out to me is kind of a thing that made me go, well, okay, dial back my enthusiasm, was like you were saying, at about the 45 to 50 minute mark, I wasn't expecting, I just thought it was just a story. Like, I didn't know it was going to play for lack of better terms, like the behind the music story arc, which they used to do on VH1, where they would do all these musicians. Yes. And it's the whole start from nothing, achieve fame, and then have a fall from grace and then redemption. That was like, they made that, in my mind. I mean, it's been around, that whole idea has been around forever. I mean, Shakespeare used it, but VH1 was the people that really drove it in my head.
They really made it a formula.
Oh, absolutely.
They made it a style of documentary that I think everybody started adopting pretty
right
after that.
And so I wasn't really expecting with that, and I didn't think it was coming until like the 45, 50 minute mark. They kind of teased it a couple of times, and it centers around the Donut King, Ted, walking around a big house and having wistful moments. And it wasn't just like one little segment. Mm-hmm. They kind of teased it a couple of times. And I'm like, and I mentioned to my wife, I was like, okay, the fall, what's he going to do bad? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, they keep teasing stuff. And she's like, oh, why can't this just be a happy story? I'm like, I hope it is. But they kind of tipped their hand a little bit. They foreshadowed it too much in a way. But like you're saying, they didn't let you know what, but they just teased it in a way that was kind of irritating to me. So I was like you, was expecting something, and sure enough, you get it. But, overall, the film worked for me. There was a lot to like about it. I do believe it is the director, Alice Gu. I do believe it is her first feature film. Mm-hmm. She's worked in film, been a cinematographer, but I think this is her first feature. So, really good. Really good for a first feature.
It was a well-made documentary. Very, very polished. The interviews were great. The footage, the archival footage, historical footage woven in was wonderful. Mm-hmm. No, it was a really good. And again, finding a great subject matter that hadn't been shared as a story anywhere. Again, I felt like it was just it played to that documentary convention that unfortunately every documentary seems to want to follow these days, or a biopic or anything else. It's the rise and fall. And it just has to be exactly at the 2/3 mark of the film.
Sure.
Show the fall and then show some sort of redemption at the end. And again, that was his story. So I get it. You're telling his story, and that seems to be what his story was. It was a rise and fall.
Right.
So, but no, I think it was a really, really well-made documentary. I think she's got a great eye for this. I love the energy that was used in the film. I mean, especially opening credits.
Opening credits were very unique.
Very energetic and just got you really excited. I mean, we're talking donuts. We're talking colorful, sugary donuts. So, of course, it has to be kind of fun and light for the most part. So, I think she did a great job with it. I wish there could have been a little more breaking with the convention of a standard documentary.
I'll throw out some other positives that I liked. You mentioned the story, but then there's a lot of background of the Cambodian conflict and the refugee situation, which was enlightening to me. I mean, I kind of knew about it, but I'm not a really good student of history. And this, kind of reinforced a lot of things that I thought I knew or were a little cloudy. They kind of cleared that away, which I appreciated. So I came away, learning a little bit about donuts, but also learning about the whole Cambodian conflict and the refugee situation in this country. It was unfortunately resonant in many ways with things going on today in America about how immigrants come here and sometimes how they're treated and, having to start from nothing and work multiple jobs and just to try to make a living. So that I found that really interesting. I liked how they also spent a good bit of time with some other donut entrepreneurs that had started out under his leadership, but it spent time with them so that you recognize them and they were, they didn't just do one quote with them. They would come back and spend a little time with them. Really interesting. Also, it's an exploration and a very honest, warts and all exploration of the American dream. Because a lot of times you see things and it's especially, you see tales that are all too common, like start from nothing, achieve fame, isn't that glad, anybody can do this. And this was anybody can do it, but beware of what happens when you get to that. And, they didn't try to soften, once they did finally say how he had messed up and how he did messed up, they didn't soften it. They said, no, this is what happened, and it really messed some people up.
And let's be honest, I mean, a little bit too, it was an interesting story to tell because it was an immigrant's story of the American dream,
right? But
also that immigrants facing the downfall, the downside of the American dream if you don't be careful.
Sure.
Which I don't think I've seen that before. I mean, you've seen somebody coming to America and you hear their story of how they got success or became happy. But it's not that common to
then see a fall.
But you don't also see we see normally a lot of people who grew up in America.
Right.
You take the American dream and then you see the fall because they
Wolf of Wall Street type
right.
thing.
They abuse it. They
Sure.
they don't know how to manage and control success.
Right.
I don't think I've seen that with an immigrant coming into America and having that same rise and fall in the downfall of the American dream at times. So that was interesting. I do think that was, again, that's why I think the story was so worth telling. But I also just loved the spirit at the end and that, yes, we're following Ted for most of the film, but then the film does a lot to share with us other stories, like you mentioned, other owners. And ultimately the story's about them, I feel like. It is about...
And about moving forward with generations taking over shops and how they're moving into the next generation and idea and revolution in donut making and entrepreneurship and all that, like using Instagram and things like that. Yeah.
So it was really good. I did like the film. I respected the film. I think that she did a great job as a first-time documentary director for sure. And I'm anxious to see what she gets working on next. I always want documentaries to try to do something a little different and not be too formulaic. It's the same reason I get frustrated with some of the biopics that we see these days, which I feel like are just so by the numbers, got to follow this format and this pattern. And I felt like this documentary held a little too close to that structure. And we should have moved away from that, but otherwise I still really absolutely enjoyed it.
Agreed.
Okay. That is The Donut King. That is available in a lot of online virtual cinemas. I want to take this moment, Chris. I think we need to kind of let people know that there are some independent film theaters out there across America that are obviously having a tough time with this pandemic. It's been tough for all movie theaters, but I think independent theaters are really having a tough go of it. But they've all moved to a lot of online virtual cinema offerings, meaning you could go to your favorite independent film cinema online, and there's a good chance they're going to have some online screenings that you can watch. This is one, The Donut King, I know is available in a lot of those online virtual cinema screenings. So, yeah.
And actually, we have it available on the Foot Candle virtual cinema. We have a film society. Normally, we screen locally here in Hickory, North Carolina, but theaters having to be social distance and making it tough for our membership to come, we've been doing virtual screenings. So if you're somewhere and you can't find the Donut King and you're interested in it, you can go to our website and we'll have a link to our virtual cinema there. And hopefully, we do rotate films in and out, but hopefully Donut King will still be there and you can watch it.
That's great, Chris. Thank you. You're right. We do have an online virtual cinema we need to make people aware of because, again, for a few dollars, you can enjoy this film and take part in the kind of online conversations about the film as well. You even can watch a little discussion that we had post film if you chose to see it after watching The Donut King. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And on our online cinema, footcandle.org, we'll have a link to it available to go. So you can actually go right to our virtual online cinema along with several other selections we have available for you right now. Good call, Chris. All right. Well, that is our 2 reviews. Sounds like we're positive on both films.
Yes.
Sounds like I was higher on David Copperfield. You and I are both high. I might have been a little bit higher on it than you were, just a tad.
Maybe, yeah.
And then Donut King, I think we were about on the same page with
about
that.
The same.
So, but both good films.
Yes.
Just,
I would recommend both.
Absolutely. I think they're both well-deserved films to watch over the holiday season for sure. All right, Chris, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we've got some movie news to share, some quick hit news updates about some different projects coming up or different directors that are getting involved with some new films. And then we will close out the show with each of us giving our recommendation for the episode, a film we think is worth checking out that we want to recommend for you. So stay tuned. You're listening to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv. We will be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv. Alan Jackson and Chris Fry with you again with the Foot Candle Film Society and the annual Foot Candle Film Festival. Here to talk movies. We just finished our reviews of The Donut King and also of the personal history of David Copperfield, which we did find out during the break. Thank you to our intern for doing some heavy lifting research there. David Copperfield is available on Amazon or other video on demand services for rental. Right. So you can rent it and watch it over the anytime over the holidays. And then The Donut King, we already mentioned. Definitely check out independent online cinemas, and even the Foot Candle online cinema will have it available. Footcandle.org. Go there and you can get a link to our virtual cinema and actually watch the film right there on the convenience of your own device or TV or computer. All right, Chris, we got some news to cover. I will say it's not terribly big news. It's a lot more speculation on some projects coming up.
Sure.
We're still in a situation where there's not a lot of films coming out in the theaters. Things are getting still pushed back and held, but it is encouraging to hear of some interesting projects that are at least still underway. So Chris, why don't we just kind of take turns? Why don't you start us off with something you find interesting in the movie news right now?
So John Krasinski, he of The Office, but he's gone on to, make A Quiet Place, and he finished A Quiet Place 2, but that has been delayed. It's supposed to come out in 2020, got delayed twice. Now it's going to come out in April, supposedly, of 2021. He's announced that he has an idea for A Quiet Place spinoff. So it's going to be adjacent. It's not necessarily going to be A Quiet Place 3, but it's going to somehow tie into that whole cinematic universe, even though they're the only 2 films so far. So that was interesting that he's already got an idea. He sold it. It's going to be made. And he announced Jeff Nichols, who directed Mud, Take Shelter, Midnight Special, which is I really, really dug that movie. That was sci-fi. And I think that was Nichols' first kind of dalliance with sci-fi. So I know he can do it. I'm really interested.
So Jeff Nichols is attached to direct.
He is attached to direct.
Oh,
yes.
Nice. Okay, good.
And that's scheduled for a 2022 release. So a year after they would release it.
So assuming that the Quiet Place sequel does come out next year, which is what has been pushed to.
Correct.
Then they're already going to start working on the spinoff film for the following year.
Correct.
Okay.
And I like Jeff Nichols. I think I pretty much like every film he's made. So I'm interested to see what he does with a franchise film, which technically after 2 movies, this will be the 3rd. So you could call it that, even though supposedly it's just tangential to the first 2 movies.
Well, they built with A Quiet Place, and granted, we haven't seen the sequel yet, but the first film does build this kind of, world that you can do a lot with. I mean, this idea of, people living in these communities and noise is the thing that's attracting these creatures. And, yeah, there's a lot you can do with that. You can follow a lot of different characters. You can take it from different angles, kind of like what they did with, The Walking Dead, that kind of TV show. They can have a lot of spinoffs because you basically created a world where now you can put new characters in that same world and follow them different ways. So yeah, sounds like a plan. I just want to see the second one.
Yeah,
that's all for me. I mean,
honestly, the good bad thing, because it is a sequel, and I thought the first was original, and I really liked it. I kind of don't have high expectations for the second one, as long as it's okay, because it's like, okay, the surprise of everything is kind of, what the creatures look like, what the deal is. So I think it kind of has a tough thing to live up to, but in a way, I'm kind of, as long as it's decent, I'll probably give it a pass. So
yeah, sure.
So in a way, the one I'm most excited about would be the one Jeff Nichols is doing, that's just going to kind of somehow relate to it. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting.
Okay, so while we're talking about films that have either been delayed or, waiting to see when they come out, we had a big announcement, Chris, just a few days ago before, as we record this, that I don't think we can put a measuring stick on how big an announcement this is for cinemas for the next foreseeable future.
Kind of like when Trolls World Tour came out. No, but that was a
you're
big
right.
deal.
No, I just think it's funny that Trolls World Tour was this big harbinger of like the change in the movie studio system.
But it was.
This one's a big one.
Sure.
So we talked about this film before, Wonder Woman 1984. Now, regardless of your own desire to see this film or not.
Woman.
Yes, it is Wonder Woman. It is a big film. It's a sequel to Wonder Woman.
Oh, gotcha.
This is 1984.
Gotcha.
Regardless of your take of superhero movies, regardless of whether you're interested in this film or not, the fact that the decision was made that they're going to release this movie has been delayed many, many times. It was supposed to come out, I think, back in May. It was going to be a big tentpole summer movie, big expectations. The first one did really well and was well regarded. It's been moved. Even the director went on record saying this film will come out in theaters, which is true. It will. However, on December 25th, it's coming out both in theaters that can actually show the films, and it's going to be on HBO Max for 1 month.
And I think I saw where is it premiering in China prior to premiering here?
Like a week earlier, yes.
Interesting.
So other countries have it in all their theaters. I mean, they're showing it, a week in advance. Here in America, it's going to be shown at theaters, but it's also going to be HBO Max for anybody who has a subscription. Now, if you do the math on it, HBO Max, I get it for free as part of a bundle with something else I have. But if you bought it straight out, I think it's $15 a month, maybe. So you start doing the math. If two people are going to watch Wonder Woman for, one time, automatically it's paid for. It's worth getting HBO Max for at least 1 month. Now, obviously, HBO Max is counting on people getting a subscription and staying with it for beyond that, but so be it. How do you feel about this, Chris? I mean, how are you going to be watching Wonder Woman 1984? Because I know I think you're kind of looking forward to the film. I know I am.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say, and it all depends come December 25th. I'd like to see it in the theater. Mm-hmm. What scares me is I like everyone to have equal access to movies. I know some things we've talked about on here are Netflix originals, but in my ideal world, everything would come out to a theater, and then it would go to maybe second run theaters so people could have a chance. They didn't want to pay the money to go see it in the big theater, and then eventually it hits Redbox and Netflix and stuff, and Amazon Prime and all these other services. But I like the idea of everybody having access to it. Mm-hmm. And if it hits HBO, which is, you have to pay for that. I mean, you have to pay, and then theaters, but people can't go because it's closed. I hate the fact that I feel like some people won't get to see it. But I think it will. I think it is definitely going to be a huge thing for the industry as far as how they do releases going forward.
Well, I think that's the bigger news here is that I think every other major studio release that was kind of being pent up and held back, I'm thinking Marvel's Black Widow. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking some other bigger movies that have kind of been holding and waiting are going to really say, okay,
you're watching.
Let's see if all of a sudden tons of people get HBO Max subscriptions and HBO's happy with the numbers and we still have a decent amount of people going out to the movie theaters where they can to see it, then maybe that's the strategy we have to follow going forward. But I do think I think ultimately this is bad news for movie theaters still, because I think everybody was waiting for Wonder Woman 1984 to be the one that will bring people back to the theater.
Sure.
And now you've cut out a big reason why people would go to the theater. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to go on this. I mean, I'll have to, like you said, I'll wait next month and see how things look and feel. But, I will be awfully tempted if I don't feel like going out to the theater. I've already got HBO Max. Hit the play button and I'm watching it.
Yeah, I don't blame anybody that watches it that way. I mean, because if you already have a subscription, free is free.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. Yeah. I mean, free as far as you already got the subscription.
It's already a sunk cost.
As opposed to taking the entire family over the holidays out to a theater.
I mean, again, I've got my two boys are adults now, so that's a $40, $45 ticket
plus
price.
Popcorn and everything.
Yeah, so
tell
me I can already use my $15 a month HBO Max subscription to watch it. All right, again, and I'm a movie theater guy.
I am
that's
too.
what's so disappointing and frustrating about this whole situation is
we run a cinema society.
I know I want to be in a theater,
sure,
but I certainly don't blame, and me myself may be guilty of taking advantage of convenience when it's available like it is. So.
Sure.
I do think it's bad news for theaters.
Yeah,
I do think if more big studios decide to do that in the next several months, it's going to be a much, much longer haul for theaters to get profitable again and get open for business at full capacity.
Sure.
Even with pandemic, let's say we got a vaccine and this time next year, things are kind of starting to return back to normal. I think the theaters are still going to be the ones taking a lot longer to recover from all this.
Agreed.
So. Okay, let's try to move on. Speaking of, by the way, Chris, your movie Freaky, the one that you mentioned in a trailer top us a few weeks ago with Vince Vaughn, the body swapping horror film.
Yes.
It's been the number one movie in America 2 weeks in a row.
Okay.
It made $1.2 million, which generally speaking, $1.2 million would maybe not even make the top 10 movie-wise, but given where we are.
It is one of the few new movies out in the theater.
It is. So if anybody's going to the theater, they're going to see Freaky.
And I have come close on a couple occasions to masking up and hand sanitizing and social distancing in the ticket line and going, but I haven't done it yet. I do want to see that film. So I may try to go see it.
Heard it's very gory.
Right.
I mean, I've heard gore doesn't bother you as bad.
No. Especially
you and I are
scaredy. With the attitude, they're not. It's kind of.
You and I are scaredy cats about just horror in general. But
it's not as many jump scares as it is just gore.
Okay. So. All right, Chris, you got another movie story for us?
Yes. This we've talked about. Movie business. So this is a film that was actually able to happen during the pandemic. Florida project director Sean Baker shot a secret movie with a guy, Simon Rex. I'm not really familiar with him. He was in the Scary movies, but he's kind of a comedian. It's going to be a dark comedy, which will be kind of new for Sean Baker because Tangerine and Florida Project are very gritty, reality-based, kind of straightforward dramas.
Tangerine had some comedic moments and lighter moments in it, but it was still couched in a much more dramatic situation. Yeah.
Right. It's called, at least right now, it's called Red Rocket is the name of it.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to it. And it was cool because it's one of the first ones I've heard announced. I think M. Night Shyamalan has worked on some during the pandemic as well, but it's encouraging to see that people can follow guidelines and still be able to make art and still be able to make some movies for us to see. So I was excited to hear that he had completed a film. So he's looking for distribution, which will hopefully come shortly after the new year maybe, and we'll get to see it.
Well, knowing that Sean Baker made Tangerine, shot it on iPhones.
True.
Automatically tells you that he's adapted a little bit more guerrilla style filmmaking, a little bit low budget, a little bit probably smaller production crew needed.
True.
So I would hope that kind of skill set helps to make a film that, obviously it's a little more tough to make it right now with guidelines and restrictions you need to follow for safety. But I would hope that he can still turn out a really good film given that. So good. I'll mention one here, Chris. I know it's one that you probably have on your list already, but I'll steal your thunder and mention it.
Okay.
The Predator franchise.
Yes. Did you see the most recent iteration?
No.
Don't bother.
Actually, I was going to mention, there's been 4 films, which I had to kind of go back and recall that was the truth because I did not really. I think the last 2 kind of blurred together for me. I knew there
Have
was.
there only
Predators.
been 4?
Well, technically, just 4 official Predator movies.
Okay.
That's not counting Predator versus Aliens. That's a
Okay.
whole different thing.
Okay.
There's the 1987 original with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Seen it?
Yep. There's Predator 2 from 1990 with Danny Glover.
Seen it?
I saw it too. Wasn't that good? But it's fine. Then there was Predators.
Have not seen, but am really curious about it.
Yeah, that's
'Cause
the
I've
one
heard
with
people
Adrian
hype it.
Brody.
Yes.
From 2010.
Heard people hype it.
Yeah. Then there's The Predator,
Which
was
is
2018.
Terrible.
Is it really?
Yes.
You saw it.
I have seen it.
Okay, that's the one Shane Black directed,
I know.
which is surprising.
Yep.
Shane Black, interestingly enough, was in the cast of the original Predator in 1987.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, he was one of the crew members. He was one of the guys who got killed early.
Right.
On. Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is just funny.
It is.
So they're making a fifth one. Don't know what variation of the word predator is going to be used for the title. A predator.
Right.
Another predator. So whatever it may be.
Predator, here we go again.
Right, exactly. But what's encouraging is the director is Dan Trachtenberg, who you may recall from doing the 10 Cloverfield Lane movie, which
Yes.
I'm a big fan of.
I am too.
I think that's a really good suspense movie, even though I don't care for the way it ended and tried to dovetail into the Cloverfield universe.
I liked it.
Yeah, I could have done without the ending, but
see.
everything up to that point was perfect.
Sure.
So well done. So I'm excited that he's being tapped to be this. He's someone I know I used to listen to him. I don't know if you did or not when he had a show on the internet, the Totally Rad Show. doing
Absolutely.
Movie and video game reviews. And then he did a short film based on the game Portal that supposedly got a lot of great attention. And then he has, in addition to 10 Cloverfield Lane, he did an episode of Black Mirror. And he's also done some episodes, or at least one episode of the show The Boys, which I really like on Amazon TV. So he's done a lot of cool stuff, a lot of genre work. I'm curious, but then again, if you had told me Shane Black was doing a new Predator movie, I'd been like, well, I'm curious about that too.
Right.
So we'll see. Somewhere I'd read that the Shane Black Predator film had a lot of production interference.
Got you.
I'd like to think that's the reason. It kind of just really didn't turn out good. But
Interestingly, I don't know if you saw this in the news article that you'd read about it. I saw references, but then didn't dig deep because I knew you were going to do the story and I wasn't. Mm-hmm. But apparently Dan Trachtenberg has been on Twitter and he's like, oh, I'm excited this news has come out. However, I'm a little disappointed because there was apparently some way they were going to tease it, or there was some, I don't know if it was a campaign or they were going to reference it in some other film or something like, I don't know. And he's like, so kind of bummed out because they've been working on this for like 4 years. He's like, so kind of bummed about that, but I'm excited that everybody's excited about a new Predator movie. So I thought that was interesting.
I was curious what their rollout plan was for announcing it, but I'm also just very curious again, is it going to be a true direct sequel to the original? Is it going to be a remake? Is it going to be or what? I don't know. So I'm kind of curious. I'm always curious when you've got a franchise where the first film is kind of considered a little bit more of a classic. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it is a good film. You got to look at Arnold.
I like it.
It's one of the best Arnold Schwarzenegger 80s action movies that was done.
It is one of those that if I see it on, which I don't watch a lot of cable TV, but I'll watch it till it's finished.
John McTiernan was the director. It's kind of in his prime. I mean, it was a really, really well done movie.
Right.
And then it's had sequels that have just been kind of either diminishing quality returns or just not getting any box office attention at all.
Sure.
So I am curious to see what their approach is going to be. Reboot it, continue on, but ignore some of the sequels or what? Don't know. So we will see. Should be interesting.
Yes.
Chris, you got anything else for us?
Nope. That was the last of mine with the Sean Baker thing. So.
Yeah, I think that's all too. Okay. Just I know you had meant, or we talked earlier that just a couple of quick notes here. M. Night Shyamalan's working on films. He's actually completed a couple films during the pandemic, which I got to admit, I like this whole run and gun style of filmmaking that Shyamalan seems to be adopting these last several years. He did it with The Visit. Mm-hmm. He did it with, what was the other one? Well, a little bit with Split.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a
Glass was pretty much all shot in one location, but that was bigger budget though, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Glass, I'm not going to get back into that one. But I think in general, his last few films, it's been kind of nice to see him just go smaller budget, smaller films, a little bit more of the Blumhouse kind of effect to it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like he's worked on and shot 2 different films during this pandemic situation.
One of them's called Old.
Yes.
Or Older. I think Old.
And very little we know about plot or anything. So as always, he's still going to be a curiosity for me. I'm still going to be anxious to see what he does. And then we also mentioned too that, or before the recording, we were talking about Black Panther 2. Obviously, that's a situation where Chadwick Boseman passed away, untimely death there, unfortunately. And, you never want to like sit here and dwell on what are you going to do with a movie character after someone's passing. It's not in good taste. But now I think Marvel's finally to the point of saying, okay, yes, we are going to make a Black Panther 2. I mean, we kind of have to. It's a big film.
Well, and a sequel had been planned.
Yeah, we are definitely planning a sequel. The rumor is right now that it's going to be featuring his sister, who was in the film, in the first film, who was more of their scientist at their
tech.
Having her play the lead character, which I'm all for. I think that'd be great. Although I thought about it. I mean, if you really want to get specific about it, I think Black Panther is a fully costumed character. And there's many times in like the comics where, he's in costume all the time.
Sure.
And so there could have been ways if they wanted to have a Black Panther that you don't really ever need to see unmasked. I'm glad they're not going with the digital recreation.
Yeah.
That would have been unfortunate, I
Yeah.
think, and a tough thing for a lot of fans. So anxious to see where they go with that, but I'm sure they'll have a good direction with it and should be entertaining all the same. All right. Well, that's all of our movie news then. So Chris, I think we're to the last point of our show where you and I like to both give out a film recommendation for people at home to listen and watch. We're approaching the holidays. I know people have been a little more homebound than normal the last several months already, but here in the holidays, probably even more so. And so let's give some recommendations of films people may want to check out. You want to go first for us?
Sure. So coming off the news item, Alan was talking about how do I feel about HBO Max and exclusivity. And I was like, not the biggest fan. Well, we reviewed, as you may recall, Borat's subsequent movie film. That was an Amazon release, and that's where you got to watch it. Well, while I had my free membership for the 30 days, I jumped on and watched another film, which I had heard about, but didn't have the option to see because it was only on Amazon. It's called The Vast of Night, directed by Andrew Patterson. And basically, it's a lower budget sci-fi. The story goes, at the dawn of the space race, 2 radio-obsessed teens discover a strange frequency over the airwaves in what becomes the most important night of their lives and in the history of their small town. So, it's a lot of dialogue based. And there's just a lot of mystery going on. I really like how the film ended. And that's kind of all I really want to say about it. And for, I think it's maybe this person's first film. It was really well shot. There's some tracking sequences that are really impressive, especially for, a smaller independent film. Offhand, I didn't recognize any of the actors or actresses. So that again says like the people that were cast, I thought were really well cast. So I don't know. I liked the film. It's called The Vast of Night. Yes, with a bigger budget and a bigger cast, it could have been, who knows what it would have been. But I really like this kind of smaller indie film. It's called The Vast of Night. And as far as I know, it is still unfortunately exclusive to Amazon Prime. But if you've already got a membership, you're set. So.
The Vast of Night. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all, but thank you for the recommendation, Chris. I've already added it to my watch list. So there you go. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go a little more, I'm sure one that a lot of people have seen, but we are approaching the holiday season. I would be remiss if I did not throw out a recommendation, which I'm sure I have recommended years in the past. I don't know when I last did this film. But as we get close to the holiday season, I always get excited to watch one of my favorite holiday films, a little more non-traditional holiday film, but still one I get a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun with. It is the 1988 version of A Christmas Carol called Scrooged. This is the Bill Murray film directed by Richard Donner. I have a lot of history with this film. I remember seeing it in the theater. When it came out, I was on a high school debate tournament trip.
Did you hold a debate about the film?
I almost did. I wanted to, because I remember coming out of the film and not caring for it as much.
Okay.
And I think it was because I wanted a super funny Bill Murray slapstick film. And this film actually has a lot more heart than I think I was ready for as a 16-year-old or however old I was
like,
at the time.
It's too mushy.
I know. But going back and watching it some more, it just works for me. I love Bill Murray. This is Bill Murray at his Bill Murrayest. I mean, you could tell sometimes Richard Donner just lets him go. He says, look, just do your thing. Just here's the camera. I'm going to turn it on. You just do your thing out there.
Sure.
And I like the moments where he does get to kind of just run with it. Bobcat Goldthwait is in the film. Has a great part. Karen Allen plays Claire, kind of the love interest. It is a true telling of A Christmas Carol. I mean, it follows the same thing, but I love the idea of he's a TV producer putting on a live performance of The Christmas Carol. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, he himself is living through the same story.
I'd actually forgotten that part of it. I've seen Scrooged and I liked it, but I'd actually forgotten that part of it. So.
Yeah, he's putting on a live presentation of A Christmas Carol.
Gotcha.
So you're alternating between a stage performance, which is very much the Victorian style.
Sure.
But he's trying to gloss it up and amp it up for a bigger audience.
Gotcha.
While he himself is actually going through the three ghosts and the past, present, and future. It just works. It's creative. It's a fun telling of that story. It's Bill Murray. Yes, the ending may be a little schmaltzy. I mean, some people say it's a little over the top sappy. It works for me. It gets me. It gets a little dusty when I watch the end of that film.
Sure.
I'm all for it. It's a great, for me, holiday film in the last 10, 15 minutes. Just bring it on home and just make it work.
Look at you tying in the review of Copperfield with Scrooged, Charles Dickens.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I did that. Wow.
No, I'm sure you had that.
I'm very impressed with myself that I did that. That was completely unplanned. Completely.
Well, good
unplanned.
job.
But yeah, I guess I'm a big Dickens fan. I just, had a lot to say positive about his work today. But anyway, Richard Donner directing. If you don't remember, Richard Donner also directed the first two Superman movies, which I'm big fans of. He did The Goonies, big fan. He's a good director. He really hit his stride in the 80s, and this is one of his later films in that time period. But still, I feel like really good. It's a little sloppy. It's a little slapdash at times. I feel like it's a little stitched together, and some scenes don't always transition from one to another as cleanly. And I feel like there's probably a lot of editing, a lot of reworking from the studio. But overall, at the end of the day, I think it's a very enjoyable film, and it's a constant in my house over the holiday season. So that's Scrooged. I'm sure you can watch it anywhere.
You can watch it everywhere.
Everywhere. It's probably going to be on TBS or some cable channel like nonstop over the holidays anyway. So,
got you.
All right. So that wraps us up for today. So we had some positive reviews of the films The Personal History of David Copperfield and the documentary The Donut King, both available online for viewing. Remember, The Donut King you can actually see through the Foot Candle Online Cinema. Go to footcandle.org to find that. A lot of movie news items we talked through, some different projects coming up, some interesting directors' work, films we're curious about seeing what happens and when they come out. And then our recommendations. Chris recommended The Vast of Night, available on Amazon. I recommended Scrooged, which is available everywhere you need to find a film. So with that, I think we are done. Chris, how can anybody get a hold of us if they want to talk about any of our opinions or ideas?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Twitter @footcandlefilm. Al and I are both on Letterboxd, where you can track what we're seeing. As always, we do appreciate star ratings or reviews that you can share with friends on iTunes. That helps us reach new listeners. We are also available on iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, and Pocket Cast.
All right. Lots of ways you can find us. And again, recommend that you check out also the Mesh.tv podcast network to find other podcasts or back episodes of this particular show if you're so inclined.
We have quite a few.
We do have quite a few. So what I kind of tell people when they ask about the podcast, say, look, if you happen to see a film that we have reviewed in the past, go back and download that episode and listen to our discussion of it and kind of give us your thoughts if you agree or disagree after you've seen the film that we discussed as well. So films live a lot longer. So, that's the good thing is that they're available online. So is our podcast episodes. So you can go back and listen to any of those reviews anytime you wish. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll look forward to talking to you next time here on Foot Candle Films.
See you in the social distance ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.